Thank you. Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank Marianne who invited me or who persuaded me to give a talk, but I also inspired by what Malcolm always said. We have to treat Indonesia seriously now. I thought we were, yeah? Why now? Okay, so my presentation is basically inspired by the statement by my president, Indonesian President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, last year when he said in Singapore at the Shangri-La Dialogue Forum every year or every second year, I think, in Singapore, he said that Indonesia now pursue what he called this one. A million, making friends with many friends and have 0 enemies. And then I try to make a sense with what he said, and this is the presentation basically is revolving around that and dealing with the potential conflict in South China Sea. Okay, so what I like to do here is quickly just mapping up the security and foreign policies outlooks in Indonesia, and also looking at both how Indonesia-China relationships going, and also Indonesia with the U.S. relationships, and also looking at what roles Indonesia can play in dealing with the rivalry as well as with the potential conflicts in South China Sea. Questions that I like to pose here is how has Indonesia positioned herself in the context of the intense rivalries between China and the US in the regions, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of the Indonesian positions? Most of the study on the interactions between China, Southeast Asia, and the U.S. has focused mainly on the rivalry of China and the U.S., but little has been done on the role of Indonesia. So what I'm trying to argue here is that Indonesia has been very central because in the past few years, suddenly Jakarta received lots of delegations, including from China. Premier Wang Jiabao visited Indonesia, and I'll show the quotation from his speech, and also Obama. Of course, Obama has a special relationship with Indonesia, and he always claimed that relationship he will nurture in the relationship with Indonesia in long run. And not just with 2 countries, other countries in Europe, including David Cameron as well, and also just a week ago, Tony Abbott and his delegate, actually his entourage, stay for 3 days in Jakarta, because they treat Indonesia now in a special position. That's what I'm trying to show you here. So Indonesian security and foreign policy principal actors basically still in the hand of the SBY's inner circles, which is basically are based on first presidential office. So SBY has special advisor on range of policies, including foreign policy and securities. Actually, 2 of Flinders graduates, Felix Wanggai and Daniel Sparing, are also advisor of SBY in the presidential office. And also Minister of Foreign Affairs, Martina Talagawa, and also Minister of Defense, Purnomo Yuskiantoro. They are 2 persons in which SBY basically rely in terms of dealing with security and foreign policies. But because Indonesia is not democratic country, the inner circle also needs inputs and dialogue with different actors, including Commission 1 in the parliament, very powerful, dealing with defense and foreign affairs, political parties, and think tanks such as CSIS, Habibie Center, and lots of think tanks in Indonesia, and also academics, and media and civil society, NGOs also quite active in criticizing foreign policies and also securities. With that kind of setting, the agenda of dealing with the rise of China and the U.S. pivots policies to engage with the regions has been subjects of dialogue and criticism and conversations among the circle as well as outer the circles. So what then is BY's or Indonesia's positions regarding to the rise of China and also the return of the US? As BY and Singapore said not long ago, just a couple months ago, basically argue about the position that Indonesia takes based on what it calls dynamic equilibrium. Meaning basically we accept the rise of new power and give that role in the order, and yet also allowing the newcomers to participate with the long view of providing political and economic stability in the region. So therefore, as I quote here, both the US and China have an obligation, not just to themselves, but to the rest of the region to develop peaceful cooperation. And then I quote it again, this is, I guess, refer to the role of Indonesia can play. Middle or smaller powers too can help lock the major powers into these durable architectures through a variety of instruments. How then the relationship Indonesia and the US? Basically, Indonesia has been approached by the US, and both sides in 2011 signed what it calls comprehensive partnerships. The documents I have basically contains wide range of cooperations from economic, security, education, and etc., cultural as well. But basically, they both agree that Indonesia and the US will do their best to, for instance, in these quotations, committed to work together to find solutions to strengthen international peace and cooperation in the light of ongoing global economic conditions, political transitions, and other transnational challenges. With China, also similar. But the problem here is that in the past, the relationship between Indonesia and China was very problematic as the result of the fall of Sukarno, etc. But only recently, not long ago, President SBY decided that it is time now to forge relationships, perhaps with the eye of making a friend, and therefore benefited from that friendship with China, and they also agree to work in wide range of cooperations. The visit of Premier Wen Jiabao last year was very significant, and this year, early this year, March this year, President SBY also visited Beijing, and they both also signed what they call also partnerships, similar like the one that Indonesia signed with the US. And Wen Jiabao's speech last year, I quoted here, "The dream of our forefathers for a thriving Asia is coming true in our time. And China and Indonesia are important force driving in this epoch making change." Basically, China also looking at Indonesia to be partner of, I guess, shaping the new order in the regions. Last, before I finish this presentation, what about Indonesia's positions on South China Sea? Indonesia basically proposed more or less win-win approach that can be done through ASEAN. So using ASEAN or with ASEAN, Indonesia will move that direction by, for instance, two things. One is as the result of the failures of the ASEAN summit in Cambodia to confront with the issue of South China Sea. Marty Legawa went to different capital cities, basically proposing code of conduct. I think has not been successful at the moment, but Marty's diplomatic or subtle diplomacy was quite significant in terms of ability to convince at least ASEAN member first before moving to others, up to even in the United Nations General Assembly meeting just not long ago. So the idea is basically to propose a code of conduct. So that was the government position. So what then can be said about Indonesian positions? Indonesia, first of all, is not a claimer. Therefore, has a more flexible position in dealing with the potential conflict in South China Sea. Will Indonesia be a regional mediator? I'm not sure yet, because we haven't, or Indonesia has no successful records in the past dealing with regional conflicts. Indonesia was involved in the peace Cambodian process. That was it. That was in 1990 with Australia, with the European countries. Indonesia has enough domestic security issues to cope with internally, particularly in different spots such as in Papua at the moment, in Sulawesi, and lots of counterterrorism projects or operations that involve. But Indonesia will, of course, use ASEAN as the forum to address South China Sea conflicts. Last but not least, Indonesia, I think, has its own interest to be friend with both China and the US, because Indonesia will not, and I think should not, choose supporting one or the other. I think with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.